Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Kill Box. Today, we're going to talk about some spicy stuff.
Yeah, no guests today.
No.
Just our unfiltered
Yeah.
opinions.
No guest, unfiltered opinions. We figured if anyone's going to get canceled on this podcast, it might as well just be you and me right off the rip.
Yeah, I hope we don't get canceled.
I don't think we will. I think we're going to do okay. We're going to talk a little bit about politics.
Yep.
We're going to talk about.
I mean, you can't have a podcast and kind of not. I guess unless your podcast is like
lame.
Totally, yeah, lame. Yeah,
Freaking boom roasted.
yeah, you got him.
Yeah, got him. Yeah, we're gonna talk about some stuff. We're gonna touch on someone trying to shoot Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Biden dropping out.
Kamala getting the endorsement from Biden.
Yeah, I don't know if that. I mean, that doesn't obviously mean she's the official nominee.
It doesn't mean she's the official nominee, but I mean, if the sitting president is not rerunning, and I would be shocked if Kamala wasn't the nominee.
Yeah. It's a crazy time in American politics. So we're going to talk a little bit about it today. I just outing myself. I mean, I'm not an expert at any means, but that doesn't mean we don't have opinions. I think when you and I discussed this episode, we're like, I mean, this is all anyone's talking about right now. So we might as well talk about it and kind of share our opinions. I've got, no holds barred, right? Like we're just,
say
what we think.
Want,
yeah.
100%. And I mean, I think there's a good chance worst case, we lose some friends. Yes. Best case, we get some angry comments, but I mean,
that's our best case. Awesome.
Best case, I don't know, dude.
Yeah.
We'll see. We might get some people.
Both sides will likely hate us.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of against both sides at this point.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think, let's just take it one by one. I literally actually wrote some notes about where I would like to go with it. My biggest concern is, just the political divide. Is it's sort of becoming, more than ever an ideological divide to where like you said, like worst case, we lose friends.
Right.
I tend to land in the camp of when I see someone on my timeline post something I don't agree with, it doesn't even cross my mind that I should, completely avoid that person.
Yeah.
I might not respect that opinion or agree with that opinion, but I don't have it. There's nothing in me that's like, I need to get rid of that person.
That's because you're an adult. And you operate as one.
It's interesting. So I think Marie and I always say that like the further you are right and the further you are left, the less informed that you are. So I would have said like 2 years ago, I'm an independent centrist, more than I have a party affiliation. I think that the entire spectrum has moved further in the opposite directions, leaving, I think it was Elon Musk that said like, he feels like he's stayed the same, and then he was a Democrat his whole life, and then the Democrats moved so far left that now he appears right, and in lots of cases people say that he's far right.
Right.
I think that a lot of people are feeling that, so it's worth talking about.
100%. I would agree completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the longest time, I think I considered myself a libertarian more than anything. Yeah. I've kind of moved away from that because at the end of the day, I typically hold some pretty strong conservative values on things. And then the more I looked at it, the more I felt like libertarians just kind of are like lazy. Like, kind of like sort of like stand for something, like this idea that like, do whatever you want. I don't care. Like, and to an extent, I agree. Yes, do whatever you want. That's
I think that
freedom.
Is their standpoint is liberty. Is that individual responsibility and individual liberty kind of it carries the most weight for decisions.
So, and there is elements of the Libertarian Party I still strongly agree with.
They get no respect, for sure.
Oh, but they always lose too. That's the other thing. I voted for freaking Mama Jo Jorgensen when she was on the ticket because
she's awesome.
She was great.
Yeah, no one knows her, but she's awesome.
And that was the sad part.
Mama Jo
didn't have a shot in the dark, brother.
No.
But anymore, it's annoying that we live in this two-party system because at the end of the day too, I actually really like RFK. But he
RFK,
runs as an independent. He's not going to win. Sorry, everyone who thinks he's got a shot. He doesn't. He's not going to win.
he put out a tweet yesterday on X that he was saying, like, if everyone just voted for who they thought could win, then maybe that person would win. But it's just so, it's just disheartening because if you don't have that critical mass of votes, you feel like you're throwing your vote away. And I think you actually are in a lot of
I would agree. Well, that's kind of where I'm at this time. Like, I mean, sort of. There's not really a candidate. Like, I like RFK a lot, but I wouldn't vote for him because there's a couple hills I'm willing to die on, and he, has a stance on a specific issue that I disagree with, and that's one of those hills. So I won't vote for him.
Yeah. Okay, well, how do we want to open this up? Do we want to just let's talk about the Trump assassination, then Biden dropping out?
Well, you've got notes with kind of a little roadmap you'd like to travel down.
I have notes on my own thoughts. So you want me to just go with my notes?
Yeah, let's start with you. Since you've got it down there, let's just hit some key points and dig into it and see where it takes us.
Okay, so I think that I would like to start talking about the difference in the left and the right, because, like I said, I felt like I'm very in the middle,
right?
But then I'll talk to the people on the left, and they'll say that I'm a fascist and a bigot,
naturally,
for being in the middle. And then if you talk to people the further right, it's that I don't love our country enough and things like that. So I have traditionally been in the middle. Like, I would define it as the middle. I would say that I'm like kind of socially liberal and fiscally conservative is how I used to describe myself.
Yeah.
I think that the key issues that I really, really care about are similar to libertarian issues. I really care about individual liberty, rather than collectivism. I think collectivism divides the country,
Right.
But if you were to talk to someone who's further left than me, they would say I'm a fascist and a bigot. And if you talk to people that are further right than me, then I don't care enough about the country to do what's right.
Yeah, you should be thrown in jail for treason.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think that there's two issues that I would feel like should be really obvious, and they're not political issues. They're just like observations. So first one is, if someone attempts to take someone's life, like they did with Donald Trump, that should be easily, you should be able to say that that's not right.
Yeah.
Like, there's no place for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Credit to Obama and his team for coming out with a strong statement. All the Democrats who came out with a strong statement against that. That's a good thing. I don't think you can weigh that as a bad thing.
No, I would agree.
So, I do tend to agree with the fact that if you're the further left you are, the more that you describe people on the right as Nazis. And if you really believe that Trump is Hitler, a dictator and a fascist, then the next, like, Nazis are one of the only group of people that I think most people would agree that, like, it was okay to be violent against them. And if you had a time machine and you could stop Hitler, you would do it.
Yeah.
Right. So when you compare a group to that, it does, I think, open the door to violence in some way, because that's the logical conclusion, is they're going to destroy your way of life. They're going to put you in concentration camps, all those things. I don't see that. I haven't been able to see that. And the reason that I don't see it is because when you look up the definition of a fascist government, it can either be based on race or it can be based on nationalism. Like in the case of Benito Mussolini, it was nationalism. In the case of Hitler, it was definitely race. And I think that's provable, right? He was trying to build the Aryan race. When the Third Reich was in charge, it wasn't the German flag they were flying. It was the Nazi regime flag.
Right.
And that's an ideological flag. And so when I see like a Trump supporter, they're flying the American flag. In fact, I think it was Don Jr. that put out a tweet that said, you kind of know who is a Trump supporter by whoever's flying the American flag.
Right.
Whereas what I see on the left is that they'll want to replace that flag with ideological flags.
Right.
That's a way bigger problem in my mind, like, or indicative of a problem. If you support the country of America, you're considered to be a fascist.
Yeah, which is wild.
Which is wild to me. Yeah, that's crazy to me. I mean, obviously we
Yeah, we support America, obviously.
We do.
We're
Yeah.
kind of fans.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And so I think that's one of my first thoughts is like, okay, so if you can't say, like Destiny, the big, streamer, he wouldn't condemn the violence against Trump or Trump supporters. In fact, he came out and, said that he laughed at the firefighter that got killed and some other things.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
What a shit bag.
Yeah, he's not a great person.
No.
And, that to me seems like an easy thing to condemn. Like I wouldn't, in fact, because I have friends before this episode, maybe I won't have friends after it, but I have friends that are pretty far left leaning from my time in Olympia. And then I have friends that are pretty far right leaning from my time in North Idaho. Those are very, very different demographics.
Oh, very different. Yeah.
And my own personal experience is when I talk to people on the right, they do not wish harm. They don't like Biden, but they don't wish him harm. In fact, they let the guy go into the sunset. He clearly has dementia.
Right.
Right. And they're even saying like it's kind of like elder abuse, what's been happening to him. They don't wish him harm, even though they think he's rotten to the core.
I've heard a lot of conservatives after the debate. A lot of them came in and did the whole Trump's going to destroy him, which I believe he did, just on a debate scale.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's obvious that Biden has some sort of mental decline going on.
It should be obvious.
He's getting older.
Yeah.
That's part of life. That's part of aging, right? And to my
Aren't
point,
they the same age?
What
Trump's
is it?
78?
78. Biden's like 81.
Okay, so Biden's a bit older.
He's a couple years older.
I'm gonna Google it.
I think those are the ages, but yeah, verify.
Yeah, verifying. Keep talking.
But to my point, every conservative that I've talked to or whatever, at the end of the day, they watch that debate and their feeling is like, I kind of actually feel bad for Biden. And I'm in that camp as well. My heart hurts for him because I sit there and watch him and like there's the one like got kind of turned into a meme. There's a clip of the statement where Biden says something and he kind of trails off with a ramble that's kind of jumbled words. And Trump's response was, I have no idea what he said there. I don't think he knows what he says.
Yeah.
And the meme is it cuts to Biden's face. And Biden's face is just kind of like.
Yeah, so you're right. Biden's 81, Trump's 78.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so.
But cognitively, it might as well be 102.
Yeah, it's super different. Trump's still pretty sharp for being 78, and Biden, he just went a different way. It's the same. I mean, it happens to people all the time. Age doesn't necessarily mean you're going to just have specific problems, but for Biden, it turned out that come 80 years old.
Well, and the biggest issue in my mind is that I feel like it's pretty obvious he had mental decline, but the mainstream narrative was he's sharper than he's ever been. I mean, there's quotes from people who's like, oh, I just spent time. He's sharper than he's ever been. And it's like, hard disagree.
Not buying it.
Yeah, not buying it. And one of the biggest interesting observations to me is that, people who I would define as like an independent thinker have been saying for months, maybe years, that he's not with it. And people who support him are like, no, he's fine. He's 100% fine. It's like, how can you ignore what you're seeing with your own eyes?
Right.
And then the moment the media changes the story after the debate, now it's okay to believe that he's on the decline. Right. So that's, to me, a flag is that you're okay. So you're not thinking, I guess my definition, I'd be open to someone proving that this is wrong, but my viewpoint is like, you're essentially only believing what you're told when it's pretty clear that that's not the case. Right. So that's a flag.
Well, I mean, even going back to one of your earliest statements of like how divisive the parties have begun, and you're going to see it on both sides, Republican and Democrat at this point, where like it really doesn't matter what your guy says. You're just going to ride that like into the sunset for as long as it'll go. And so it's like, Biden's your guy. You're not going to be in the camp of like, he's slowing down, he's not sharp, all this other stuff. Everything he says is perfect. His policies are phenomenal, regardless of if they are or not.
That's true.
And then everyone's going to do for Trump. In Trump's first term, like there's a person I was friends with on Facebook, and I would listen to him just sing Trump's praises about how he's the greatest human being and how he's like the greatest man of God and he's God ordained to do this. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, this is the dude that, I mean, he said some pretty offensive stuff about Hispanics. He's made comments about women menstruating. Like, he said some pretty
Yeah, he's kind of a
things.
bully. Like,
He's he's an asshole.
Yeah.
You know, I've always said that I liked Trump's policies, but I don't like him as a human. Like the only thing about his personality that I do like is when it comes to like the way he does I forget the actual phrase, but the way he works with other countries. Like, I mean, I just watched foreign policy. I just watched a clip of an interview with Putin late last night, where he came out and was talking about, I thought it was going to be Putin being like, I'm going to take Donald Trump on if he wins. But instead it was, and I'll find the clip so I can actually verify this. But Putin came out and was doing this interview and said, Trump wants to stop our war in Ukraine. And if he's elected, we would honor that, basically, is what he's saying.
Well, and the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, I think it's
Zelensky.
Yeah, I think it's how you pronounce it. But he said that if Trump becomes president, he would consider peace as well.
100%.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, because people are afraid of Trump. They actually respect him because he is a bully, and if anyone's going to hit the red button,
sort of peace through strength.
Yeah, you know,
that's kind of
the other thing. To a different point, me and a friend were talking about this a couple nights ago when I was in Olympia, and you know, we both. I don't have anything to actually verify this. This is purely speculation and opinion. So
at least you recognize that.
Take it.
I don't even know what you're about to say. But.
Yeah, take this for what it's worth.
Yeah.
We believe that the reason why people dislike Trump so much is because neither party wants him to win, because both parties are making money off of wars and everything else, and Trump's the guy that comes in and stops them. So the left is making
I think that's true about the political elite.
Yes.
I think that regular people don't like him because of his lack of character. He doesn't seem to be able to control his tongue and the things that he said in the past.
Right.
And so that's why I think regular people don't.
Yes, regular people dislike him, I think, because media portrays him in a bad light. But he also gives them a lot of ammunition to do that.
He portrays himself in a bad light.
So, and I don't want to just blame it on the media.
Yeah.
The media does do a bad job, I think. The media is very easily bought. But also, when you give them like a truckload of ammunition to use to, like, I've always said, if Trump would have just shut the hell up and just let his policies happen, they wouldn't have anything to throw at him.
Yeah.
But the dude's a dick. And he doesn't know how to shut up. He just says stupid stuff because thinks he's invincible and does whatever he wants.
And I think that's where, you know, we'll get in the comments fervent Trump supporters that believe he's a man of God, that believe that God, you know, it's like almost like manifest destiny. But I think we can't, or at least I can't sit here and say, like, how can you not believe Biden's on the mental decline when you see it with your own eyes?
Right.
And the media tells you one thing. I would say the same rule should apply to Trump in the sense of like, well, you've seen him, you've seen clips of him. We know in 2005 what he said about women to Billy Bush in private when he didn't think he was being recorded. It's pretty despicable.
Right.
You know,
but, well, not to cut you off, but do you think, so 2005, that's almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you think that something 20 years ago should still be held against you?
Personally, I think people, you know, can change their viewpoints. So, you know, in fact, that was actually one of my thought points. Of like, you can pull up clips from Kamala and clips from Biden in the past that, you know, from Biden's camp, like, are clearly racist, clearly, like, against black people. I really hate the double standard thing.
Yes.
I hate that that's the thing that drives me the most insane, is that like you said, it's like, my candidate can do no wrong. It's like, well, that's not true.
He can.
Yeah, he can. Yeah.
Joke's on you.
Yeah. So to me, that's the biggest issue, is because of the two-party system and whatever's driving. I mean, I have viewpoints on what's driving it, but this massive divide, that, you know, we feel like the world will end if the other candidate gets in office.
Right.
When Trump was in office the first time, the world didn't end. When Biden was just in office, the world didn't end. The best thing we can do is be civil to each other and try to find as much common ground as we can find.
Right.
Because we're all Americans, we're neighbors, we interact in schools and marketplaces. So to me, that's the biggest problem in America, is the divide.
Well, the divide has gotten out of control at this point. You know, it's,
well, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do the episode, was like, okay, we'll just be two normal people talking about our viewpoints and we'll see what happens. But
right.
You know,
yeah, I'm curious to see what happens. But the division is, it's, I mean, I don't know if I can say I've lost friends, but I've had friendships be affected because of different viewpoints, and it's really hard for me to wrap my head around of like how, like we've been friends for years, but now like you have this perspective of me that I'm some like evil person who hates specific people groups based on, like, when it comes to politics, like I'm not super well versed or an expert by any means, but I I know what I think is important. I know what I think is valuable to America as a nation and community.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make a vote based on policy and what I think is the best choice for America moving forward. And at the end of the day, if I genuinely thought Biden was going to bring the most value to the table, like, and I align as a Republican or a conservative, I'm going to vote for Biden. I mean, it's the same thing.
Sure.
RFK, again, to bring him back up, had it not been for really just one issue, I would probably vote for RFK over everyone. I think he's well-spoken. I like how he's all for independence and freedom and everything else.
Well, I think he's like a classic liberal. I think that's the term that people are using now. It's the Bill Maher's of the world and the RFKs of the world. Like there's a JFKs,
Right.
It's like there's a classic liberalism. In fact, if you listen to some of those old speeches, they would align with modern day centrist conservatives.
Yeah, 100%.
Really,
Well, the other really attractive part to an RFK is that it doesn't feel like there's any division around him. Like it's not so freaking intense. Like the Biden and Trump thing right now, man. I can't wait to get through these next 4 years to just move on from both of them and like hopefully kind of come back to a little bit more common sense. Because at this point, it just feels like we're at all out war between the two parties. And each party thinks the other one's evil. It does not matter what happens. It doesn't matter about facts or truth or anything else. Your side is evil. You're trying to destroy the nation. You're going to destroy democracy, which is an absurd thing to say in a political race. Like that's crazy.
America's
to me.
not actually a democracy anyway.
No, it's not. And to claim that,
it's
number
a republic.
one, yeah, that's a very
You're
good
supposed to
point.
have representative government, not just the mob rules.
Yeah. It's a wild time, and it's quite frankly just gotten annoying, and so, which is probably why I don't speak too much about it. Every now and then I'll make like a post on Instagram or share something I thought was interesting or whatever. Last night I was sharing that. Well, again, everything's crazy right now, so no one knows what's happening, and so I shared the thing about Biden not running for re-election, and then I shared the nomination for Kamala, and I mean, my pure unfiltered opinion is Kamala's a joke, and I don't know. I have zero desire to see her in any kind of powerful position.
I mean, I don't really know what her policies would be, but
no one does.
Yeah.
It's Biden's policies is basically what she would do. She would just do it much worse.
Well, let's do some general viewpoints, because I think it would be useful to talk about that a little bit, because I'll just throw them out there.
Right.
I'll just say what I believe and what I don't believe. So I do believe that both sides, Republican and Democrat, are puppets in a sense, and that both sides are greedy and want power the most.
Right.
My belief is that Biden and Harris fall firmly in the camp of tell us what to do, essentially, and we'll do it. That's my belief. I don't think Trump falls into that camp. I think Trump's like a free radical.
Right.
My proof to that would be in 2016, the Republicans in power didn't want Trump, but because he won the nomination, they sort of had to begrudgingly give it to him.
Right.
Whereas when Bernie Sanders won the Democratic nomination, they took it from him. I'm pretty sure that's provable. And that's in one way a difference that you can see in the parties right away. It's that I think my viewpoint is folks on the liberal leaning left side, they are zealots for their belief. They really do sincerely believe that Trump is like a Hitler fascist, and they will do anything, including switch out their nominees. They'll do really rascally things in order to win. Whereas conservatives have at least honored the processes and systems from what I can see. I'm sure people in the comments will be like, what about this case? And what about this case? Okay. I'm just saying in general, what I see, I'm open to being wrong. Do I think that a lot of Republicans are greedy and owned by corporations 100%.
Yeah.
That's why when you look at the stock trading, both sides are guilty of it.
Right.
Right? They get inside information. How is that not
Dude,
insider
politics
trading?
is the
It's so dirty.
only career you can go into poor and come out a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
With doing very little effort.
Right. So I do see that, and I believe that. I think that Trump's a narcissist. That's what I think.
100%.
I think that you can trust him to do what's in his own best interest. There was actually some policies in 2016 I don't agree with that he put in place. Like I don't agree with a vaccine mandate. I don't agree with that. I think people, I think that when we look back, that probably wasn't the best decision.
No.
I think it should have been made free for people who wanted it. And then if you didn't want it, you could stay quarantined. That's how I would have done it if I were king of the world. I think that but I think you can trust him to do what's best for him. Like he passed a law. I can't remember the code, but it basically took away a lot of deductions for home-based businesses.
Right.
You know, he's in real estate. The commercial real estate market was really struggling. And this is even before COVID. And so I saw some policies that were pushed through by him and his team that made it harder for home-based businesses to take those tax deductions. So those are things I don't agree with.
Right.
And I wish that we had some of those back from the Obama era. But generally, I think that's why I would align with a libertarian. I believe in liberty. People should be able to choose. And the only place I don't tend to line up is when it comes to people who are under 18 years old. Like, I don't believe a parent should be able to, give their kids hormone blockers and things like that. I just don't believe that they should be able to do something to their kid that would, before their brain's fully formed and they can make their own decision.
Yeah.
If you're over 18 and you want to transition,
if you're an adult,
do
whatever you want. Like, live your life. Who cares?
Yeah.
Leave the kids alone. Is my stance on that as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty fair stance to take.
And I think that there's a real quiet, centrist, moderate group who all agrees with that, but we're just not going to shout it from every rooftop. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have this talk is like, the heart of the Killbox podcast is to talk about and process things in front of people, to just sort of live, flaws and all, you know. But yeah. So that being said, I think what I see in the left is a zeal for protecting and preserving human rights is what I believe that they would define it as. And I say they because I don't subscribe to that. And I don't see any policies on the far right that are policies that are racist. Are there racists in that group? Of course. Yeah.
Sure.
I would say there's racists in the other group as well. But I don't see any policies that take people's liberties. Can you think of any?
No. I mean, none that I can think of.
I mean, the biggest one is pro-life, pro-choice. I mean, the people on the left would say it's a right because the baby's growing within you, that you should be able to terminate that pregnancy. And then people on the right and far right are typically absolutionists about it. Like, it's like, it should never be allowed.
Yeah.
And I think most moderates believe like, well, there are probably cases where it should be allowed, but it shouldn't be a birth control method. Yeah.
No, the convenience abortion type stuff is insane to me. It
is difficult to write policy around that.
It's 100% difficult to write. Well, I don't even know if I necessarily believe it should be that difficult. But again, this is it comes down to my perspective on it, which is going to be different from everyone else's. I referenced, there's a couple hills I would die on. One of those hills is the abortion hill. Yeah. And, I am firmly pro-life. I can't get behind an idea that you get to kill an unborn baby out of convenience. Now, there are situations, because, Ben Shapiro makes this argument, and there's going to be a bunch of people that hate Ben Shapiro and the fact that I'm referencing him, but I think it's a valid argument.
Well, you're just referencing his argument.
Right. I've watched him sit there and have these debates with people where they come in and they always bring up, rape and incest. And and the number, I don't know specifically, but I know it's
really low,
marginally low, like lower single digits is the percentage of cases that have to do with rape and incest. And his pushback has always been the same thing. Okay, if I concede to rape and incest, will you concede to banning the rest of it? Yeah. And they always say no. And so like, there's this idea that like, you want to have the freedom that if you are irresponsible and get pregnant, that, oh, it's going to mess my life up. Well, you should have made better choices. You know, that's not the fault of this unborn child that you chose to be irresponsible in your sex life.
Yeah.
You now have to take responsibility for your actions. Yeah. And that's my biggest issue with the abortion argument is people want to be able to remove the personal responsibility from making poor choices and conveniently go and murder an unborn life.
Yeah, I'm pro-life as well. I do think there are cases where when the mother's life's in danger.
100%. I pick my wife every time.
Yeah, where I can see a medical reason for it. Still would be a brutally challenging decision.
Would be a heartbreaking choice to make.
I land in the pro-life camp. Interestingly enough, not my religious beliefs are that you shouldn't kill children.
100%.
And most people who are even pro-choice will agree that it is a child. I mean, that argument's been kind of debunked at this point now. There's a lot of even third wave feminists that are like, yep, it's a life, but it's still, my choice to terminate that life. So we wouldn't agree. I don't think that, I think that, well, here's my point. I don't only land in the pro-life camp because of my biblical religious beliefs. I think from a humanist standpoint, human life has inherent value. And I think that a good policy could be the moment, whatever age, that with medical technology, we could get that baby to survive without the mother, then that should be the new line.
Sure.
I think that would be a great policy. I mean, even though I believe that none of it should be terminated,
right.
I think that when you're managing groups of people that don't have the same ideologies, that you have to use some kind of a science-based
There's going to be a give and take on it. Like if one party gets their way 100%, I mean, it just is an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
And while I would love to have my way be the right way, I know that the chances are very high that will never happen. And so now it comes down to, again, back to the Ben Shapiro thing. Okay, if I'm willing to concede on this, will you meet me in the middle here? But that's where we need to get back to like a bipartisan
civility.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to live among each other. So, and I think, obviously I'm a Christian. So, my viewpoint is I see that God makes his will known and then gives us the freedom to disobey that will.
Right.
So I think that, when we're talking about governance, you shouldn't want, and neither should I, to force everyone to do things the way that we believe them. I think that's unhealthy.
Right.
But I think when it comes to laws, like protecting human life should be really high up there. And people say, well, are you for the death penalty? I'm like, actually, I'm not. I'm actually not for the death penalty.
I'm very much against the death penalty.
Because I've seen enough narrative examples and anecdotal evidence that we get it wrong sometimes. And I would actually rather have my taxpayer, I lock them up forever.
Yeah.
But that human life does have value, even if they've committed some pretty, intense atrocities. I just don't think we have the wisdom to take someone's life.
Yeah. Well, it's not our job to play God like that.
Yeah. I mean, would I love for people that rape and hurt children? Would I want them dead? 100%. I want them gone. But I think we should restrain ourselves. We should lock them up to protect society from them. But there is a chance that God can deliver them, at some point in their life. So that argument has never held water with me because I'm pro-life. I'm not pro-war either. Do I think there's a time when violence is necessary? Because I'll hear people say violence is never the answer. Well, that's not true.
Right.
Sometimes it has to be. If you have a maniac that's hurting other people, you might have to be violent to stop them, which is why I think the rhetoric of conservatives or fascists, Nazis is more dangerous than the rhetoric from the right.
Right.
What I see in anecdotal daily life is that if, because we live among a lot of conservatives, and they'll look at the other side and be like, dude, they're crazy. They're insane. And they don't respect them, but they don't wish them harm. That's what I see.
I've never heard one person.
Not one.
wish harm
Yeah.
on a Biden, on a Harris, on
Yeah.
a Nancy Pelosi.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard anyone say when something bad happened to
Not
them,
in
they
real life. I
deserved it.
haven't. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen tweets,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, but the reality is on the other, just for a little side tangent, I believe that it seems like there's this huge divide, but I also at the same time believe that there's a very quiet majority where it's like we're hearing from the 10% loudest on the left and the 10% loudest on the right, but there's 80% in the middle that kind of finds themselves very similar to, I would say, where you and I are.
yeah.
But we just don't talk about it, or we don't have a platform.
Right, because it's too much hassle to talk about it because
Yeah.
it just brings so much drama
Well,
into your
it
life
be-
from the extreme ends.
Yeah, it becomes so
Literally
vicious.
what we're opening ourselves up to. I mean, there will be people that wish our kids dead, that wish, and that is just insane to me. But
Yeah, dude,
I think
say
the
something about
reason,
my boy will fight.
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why we're doing it is because the more people that are centrist and reasonable and civil start talking about it, like that should be the public discourse, I think.
It's a lot of,
And I'm open up, like anybody who wants to come on the podcast from the other side, I would love to have a conversation. I wouldn't even call it a debate because I don't think I'm educated enough to have a debate.
Yeah.
But why do you have to be an expert on policy in order to have an opinion about policy?
Right.
I think that that's dangerous in and of itself. Now, foreign policy might fall into a different category because, other cultures and
there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, I hope we have experts that are good at that in those arenas. But I think I more and more falling into sort of I think it's called the America First agenda, which sounds really scary. But here's what I mean. I think I fall in that camp, but I think that we should take care of our veterans.
100%.
I think that I'm great with social safety nets for people. Actually, I had a crazy idea. I'm going to share it. If I were king of the world, we all have social security numbers, right? That people that are born here or immigrate here legally,
right?
They use that social to track our taxes.
Yeah.
Why don't we give everyone a safety net of, let's say it's $30,000. And when you're injured and you can't work, you can draw from that.
Right.
If you maintain good health and you're just either fortunate or make good decisions and you want to draw from your little safety net account to start a business, wouldn't that be cool? Is it like if you can give yourself income for a year to start the business?
Oh yeah.
And then like, if you don't use it by the time you're 40, it turns into your Social Security. So I'm actually, I don't understand why the safety nets are only for people who can't, who don't work. I would say some of them can't work and then some of them choose not to. It's hard to figure out.
Right.
It's hard to manage it. Right. But I think it'd be cool. It's like, let's make it for everybody.
Yeah.
And then you can choose how you want to use it.
Right.
Like,
well, if we had more things like that in place, that would be phenomenal. And I don't think you'd get a lot of people that would disagree with you. I'm not necessarily for social safety nets, but I also believe that there's way too many of them and majority of them get abused significantly.
Yeah, I think that there's some strong evidence to say that is the case, but falling in that America First bucket, rather than sending all this money overseas for foreign wars or foreign interests or whatever. Yeah. Because once the money's offshore, it's hard to figure out where it goes. I happen to think that both sides are benefiting from it.
Oh, I 100%
keep the money here and care for the people that are our citizens. And I think that's why it's called an America First agenda. But I see that, like, let's take care of our veterans. Let's take care of our disabled people. Let's take care of, let's build more affordable housing. Let's supplement entrepreneurs who have great ideas. Like, I want to get, I don't know if back is the right term, but I think there were times in our country where we were better at incentivizing entrepreneurship, that we were better at caring for one another. Yes, we had a more homogenous society back then, but I don't think it's impossible now. But we do, the only way we can start that is by meeting in the middle, like literally coming together and being like I have a lot of friends that are very, very liberal and would disagree with my pro-life stance. But I don't think they're evil.
Right.
I think that they're people of high empathy and they want freedom for people that think differently, even if they themselves don't think that way. And I can respect a part of that. I think that there should be like banks of a river rather than a 2-inch pipe. Like, we shouldn't have to control everything because pressure builds up and then you explode. Yeah. But I think there should be banks to control the flow of our freedoms.
Yeah.
I think freedom of speech should have some banks to it. But I think that it should be very, very wide, because freedom of speech is how we convey ideas, and it's okay if we disagree.
Yeah.
You know, but calling for people's deaths and calling for people violent, I think that it's
unnecessary.
Yeah.
There's really no place for it.
Yeah.
But there's also, man, that's a tough one for me, just because I think if you want to be, to put it bluntly, just a royal piece of shit, like, I think you should have the freedom to say whatever you want. But there's consequences to every action, good or bad, right?
Yeah. If you're saying, like, should you be able to say racist things and things like that? I do think
say
you should
whatever you want.
Say whatever you want.
You're just not going to be very popular.
Yeah.
But like, if you're going to sit here and call like that, you're going to go commit a serious violent act towards someone, like, there should absolutely be someone stepping in on that.
You can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, we need freedom of speech to preserve people's ideas, but then if someone's like, I want to kill that person, well, then you obviously have the idea that you want to do that, and that should be restricted.
Worth investigating.
Yeah, it's worth investigating. Yeah, I don't want to get into Minority Report land where we're like, you know, but yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that if you want to be a racist publicly in a public square or a public whatever, you know, like Twitter or Facebook, then the way I would solve it is give everyone the controls to mute those people, and you can be a social pariah if you want to view the world that way. In fact, freedom of speech kind of lets you know who to avoid in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's a pretty helpful tool.
It can be. Yeah. I don't subscribe to the viewpoint that if you say something I don't like, it's violence toward me.
Yeah, that's stupid.
I don't subscribe to that. I do think words are powerful because ideas are powerful, but if you could just turn those voices down and get them out of your life, I think that you could maintain mental health that way. X has done a lot for word filters, which I think is good.
Right.
But I tend to fall in that camp of like, these social platforms should be like phone lines and be unregulated in that sense, that we should have the freedom to speak how we want, but then give the freedom because to control what you see. I don't like that the companies control what you see. I don't like that.
Well,
I don't like it that the government can control what you see. So I just think it's important. You know, but I would love the individual control. And that's why I used to not like the idea when like there were like great movies with lots of like, you know, either violence or sexual content that maybe you didn't want to see. Why can't you use like a tool that turns those scenes off so you can still get the content? There was a
platform back in the day, because I mean,
VidAngel is called.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
And
but I think Hollywood execs, or I don't know who was able to get it sort of outlawed. We have airplane movies, right? And that was sort of the concept, but it was changing copyrighted material and presenting it to the audience in a way that the director didn't want. And so it was basically said like, this is our freedom of expression and our freedom of speech. So if you don't like it, don't watch it.
Get on board or don't.
You know, get on board or don't. So I am a pro free speech. So I think you should be able to say what you want, but I actually like the idea that you can control, because we have the technology to do that now. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Well, with AI, you can do just about anything you want. I mean, but, and again, there needs to be personal responsibility. And that's, I look at my Facebook feed and Instagram, there's already like a mute feature. Yeah. So if it starts feeding me these random things that I don't follow, and I'm just like, I don't want to see it. Like, for the longest time, this is the weirdest thing in the world, Instagram. And, I know it wasn't just me, because I had a few friends that were like, holy shit, I've been getting the same stuff. It started sending me because these dirty little OnlyFans girls found a loophole on Instagram where they could show their boobs if they were breastfeeding. So they would get fake dolls and act like they're breastfeeding, but they'd be like fully hanging out. And so my Instagram reels would start feeding me that stuff. But you can go on there and hit mute, and you got to mute like 15 different posts. But eventually you get to a point where you start muting stuff and you just don't see it anymore. Yeah. But it takes personal responsibility. Yeah. Like I don't want to sit here and cry victim and say, Instagram, you need to block everything on here because now I have to see it. No, it's just as easy for me to be like, I don't want to see that. So I'm going to mute it. I'm going to block whatever profiles I need to block because I don't want to see this stuff.
I don't agree with China much, but they have one policy I like, that kids under 15 can't have social media,
Oh,
or
that's brilliant.
and you can go into your TikTok and you can turn on the STEM feed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and because that's what they feed to their kids.
Oh yeah, because China's being smart about that. Because
I do think that's a better solution.
All of our youth is watching idiots dance for millions of likes, and then they think I'm going to be a TikTok influencer, and I'm going to do these really obnoxiously embarrassing and quite frankly cringy like public interactions. Everything is hypersexualized and dumbed down. And then you look at China, where it's like their youth get fed things about science, engineering.
Yeah.
Like their TikTok influencers are like prominent in math.
It doesn't take a rocket
things.
scientist to look down the future 15 to 20 years from now and go like, they will be in a stronger position than we will be in. And if you work with young people in any capacity, you recognize that they're not emotionally resilient.
Right.
And that's, they're a reflection of their environment, you know, in a lot of ways. And I guess I'm speaking of kids from like 6 to 14, 15. And then that obviously bleeds into high school because they're pretty far behind emotionally.
Right.
They struggle with their identity. They don't feel, safe. And I think that it's because they're just being fed this constant stream of, they only see people's highlight reels. So they're dissatisfied in their own life. And that there's nothing of real substance that they can aspire to. I think that is a real problem. I don't want to eliminate free speech for it, but I do think that we have the technology to do better filtration systems, and that I would support some kind of like, we have rated R restrictions for kids. Like I think that there should probably be something similar for social media.
Well, there should also be, again, back to personal responsibility, where like, we're both parents, like it requires some more work and responsibility on the parents' end to make sure you're leading your children in an appropriate way. Like,
my kids have phones and they have like Instagram,
but your kids are great. But it's because we also
really spend a lot of time talking about it.
You put the extra effort in to make sure your kids are growing up to be good members of society that have something to contribute.
Yeah,
but
it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And I mean, I've got a 3-year-old and we're every day learning more and more about how much work it is. Every time I think this is so hard, somehow it gets a little bit harder. And then you've got to like learn how to navigate that. Right.
Exactly.
And so I think the parents, like we can't just blame social media in China and influencers and all this other stuff. Like it's your kid. You need to have some responsibility on your end to step up and say, well, if I don't want my kid to see this, like it may piss my kids off, but I'm also not my kids' friends. Like I'm your parent. I'm here to teach you and do my best to lead you through life until you reach adulthood and can make your own decisions. Yeah. So you need to start, like we as a community, like the whole, and this may be a little, I don't know if it'll make people angry, but the whole idea of this like gentle parenting of like, just give your kids all the freedom, let them do whatever they want. Like let them feel everything. Like that personal opinion, that's stupid.
Well, yeah,
they don't know what they're doing.
Really prominent psychologist. She was recently on Rogan. She wrote a book. I can't remember the name of the book, but the more children rehearse their problems, the worse their mental health is. Right. And so she's making a case that when you put your kid into therapy really early while they're developing and all they do is talk about their problems, you actually create a more unhappy adult. Right. Like I don't know, that just rings true. Like, well,
my brain just goes to like this practical sense, at least I think it's practical. It could be a completely dumb statement, but if you're 14 years old, you've barely lived any life, and now you're spending a good chunk of your like later years of 14 heavily focused on like these emotional problems and all the things that are going wrong in your life that you need to dig through. Like, to me, it's like, okay, well now like this is what you view life as, is just like constant problems and emotional stuff. And as you get older, life just gets harder. Like there's value to that. Yeah. But like at an early age, like even with my son Jackson, like the dude's got some heavy feelings. Like he feels everything.
He's a strong feeler.
But for the last like week, I've been working with him on this, like the silliest thing will happen and he goes full meltdown. And it's like, buddy, like you're only 3, so I don't know how much of this will actually stick in his brain, but that's why I keep doing it over and over again. of
you can always find out who's going to be the problems when they're older because they can't emotionally regulate now.
So that's what I tell Jackson. Hey, and he'll be crying and tell me like I'm just so frustrated, and I can tell him like, hey, you can be frustrated, you can
you
be
can
sad,
say that, communicate that,
do whatever, but it doesn't mean you get to just sit here and cry for 45 minutes because the world doesn't revolve around you.
Yeah, that's
you
really
need to learn
good.
to control your emotions.
Yeah.
And so like
and I think that the distinction is the world doesn't revolve around you, and you can't get your way by negatively impacting everyone around you. But I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm in it with you. I'm here. I'm going to listen.
Like
we need so much more of that.
I can give a testimony of it working. Like this morning, he was not doing great. Like he'd been out of his daycare for a couple of weeks. He'd been at home.
Yeah.
Like he kind of got back used to just being at home with mom and dad. But today was his first day back in daycare.
Yeah.
And so he was having a rough morning. Allison had left for work. And he was just crying. And so I told him, had our talk. Hey, buddy, I understand you're upset. You need to control your emotions.
Yeah.
So why don't you come sit up here with me for a minute? Let's take a deep breath.
And it's not have emotions. It's control them. Have them. Talk about
experience and feel your emotions. You're going to experience and feel them your entire life.
Yeah, they're super real.
But they cannot dictate your decisions. You cannot let them control you in your life.
Yeah. Looking at you. Different people.
Yeah. It took all of like 2 minutes after that conversation for him to sit up on my bed with me. And we just sat there for a little bit. And then I started, you start asking like, okay, you're calmed down a little bit. Yeah. I was so frustrated. Yeah. What are you upset about? I don't want to go to school. I get it.
Valid. I don't want to go to work.
I got to go to work. I kind of would love to just sit here with you and watch shows and do something completely different, but that's life. I got to go to work. You got to go to school, but that doesn't mean we get to we're going to have a bad day, right?
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, I get to see my teachers. Yeah, and you like your teachers, and we go on this little like 10-minute 3-year-old conversation about his teachers and everything else.
Yeah, it's mental health training. You're teaching him to see the good in things, and I mean,
bro, I dropped him off at daycare, and he was stoked. He ran up, gave his teachers hugs. Like,
that's great. That's a huge
wanted
win.
to see his toys. I know. I was like fully prepared for like a meltdown of having to sit there like, just take the kid. I gotta go.
Yeah.
But he was great. But we've been putting extra work in the last however many days of like, this is something that I can personally feel and see is going to get out of hand unless we kind of nip it in the butt now. And so it comes back again to the original point. Parents need to take personal responsibility for raising their children. It is not the school's job to raise your kids. It's not the government's job to raise your kids. It's not a nanny's job. It's not anyone else's job but you. You made the kid. You made the choice to knock someone up or get knocked up.
Yeah.
You now have the personal responsibility of raising that human. And I think you owe it to society to do your best at that and not be lazy.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with all that. I mean, I think for certain people it's easier than others, but it doesn't negate your responsibility to do it. I have a lot of respect for women who raise their kid and work 2 jobs. I think it's out of control. That's probably the hardest thing in the universe.
I spent like 3 days alone watching my son, and I sat there and thought, like, I don't know how my mom did this with 3 boys growing up. This is my worst nightmare.
Respect to Karen.
Yeah, respect. Shout out Karen, dude.
Shout out to Karen.
Shout out Karen.
Okay, let's do some rapid fire stuff. Let's just take a topic and give a hot take, like for the clips, but also to kind of keep us on the political stuff, because I think it's indicative of how it goes, because these political conversations reflect a value system,
right?
Which I think is why people, I'm just going to say people on the left and the right, but people on the left will quit hanging out with people on the right because they think we have wildly different value systems.
Right.
I actually don't think that's 100% true.
Right.
I think we have this probably really similar value systems. We would take different routes to get there.
Right. I think everyone wants the same end goal. Just different ways to get it.
Before we do the hot takes exercise, I'll say what I believe is, because I live among more conservatives now than I live among liberals. When I was in Olympia, I lived around more liberals, right? And I don't think any of them are really bad people. Like I think that they have big hearts. They want to help people. I think that they're generally speaking good people. Okay? Yeah. Now, in that group, there's definitely radical ideologies that I think are harmful and not good in any way, shape, or form. Just like on the right, there are racists. They tend to collect racists and nationalists, that are unhealthy, right? Okay, but let me say a couple things that I know conservatives view.
Yes.
I have difficulty representing the liberal viewpoint because I don't 100% understand it.
Right.
I doesn't mean I think they're evil. I just don't understand it. So I'm going to go through and you jump in whenever you feel like, but what I see up here in my everyday life is I don't see people that hate immigrants. I see groups of people that want a wall. They do want a wall, but they'll say it up here like this. We want a big wall and a big gate.
Right.
We want people to be able to get through it legally. We don't believe that immigrants should be given more stuff than like veterans who've served our country, free stuff.
Yeah.
They don't like mass unregulated immigration. Right. That's the viewpoint.
Yeah.
I don't know if the left does want that. I don't understand why you would want that.
I mean, I have my dirty conservative conspiracy theories about why it is what it is, but I mean, I guess my hot take is I think that the current administration to win will do whatever it takes, and that's why they were trying to push policy to allow illegal immigrants to vote and why they're letting them in by the millions. Because I think they knew they had a pretty small chance of winning if the current administration.
I think it would be hard to prove that that's not the case.
Right.
I think most people with a head on their shoulders like, well, that's probably why you would do that.
Well, again, and to just echo your point, conservative, everyone on the conservative or Republican Party I've talked to, when it comes to immigration, it's not like they hate people from Mexico and anywhere else coming into our country.
Some do, but most don't.
Some do. Yeah. I've never talked to one.
Me either.
Every single person I've talked to said, you're welcome here. Come to America, make your money, dude. Like, do your thing, do it the right way, because one, it's absurd that we're giving out as much money as we are to people who are illegal immigrants who just snuck in. They don't pay taxes. They're not doing anything else.
Totally agree with that.
And then to what you also just said, how do we have so many homeless veterans sleeping on a street, getting addicted to substances, committing suicide, like experiencing a really tragic version of life after they went to war to fight to defend our country, but we're going to let people come in illegally and we're going to give them everything while these guys sleep on the street. Yeah. That's my frustration. Yeah. If you want to come to America, more the merrier. I'm for it.
And I would say
do it the right way.
I think that we in this conversation have used veterans. I think it's a slim margin of people, but I would actually include American families who are struggling. I think this if we're going to give financial support, it should go to single moms who are struggling, things like that. That's why I get to be like, that's why I'm a little bit okay with the safety net. Yeah. I do think we need better policies around who gets it and how it gets abused.
Well, people need help. We should be able to help them. And I mean, on a completely different note too, I also think for all of you involved in church that are watching, that's your job. Step up and help
that's your job, dude.
Stop harboring millions of dollars in your account and go help some people.
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, no question there. But just
yes, I agree.
That I would love anyone who is of the liberal viewpoint. The further left, the better. You're welcome to come on the podcast. We're not going to debate. We'll have a conversation. We'll treat you with respect. We might disagree, but I would love to have someone that can represent that viewpoint intelligently. Yeah. Because this is a one-sided conversation. We're just kind of broadcasting our ideas. Yeah. It'll get a lot of hate in the comments, but I think more people probably view the world the way that we're talking about it than not. So that's what we hear up here about immigration. That's my viewpoint on it. I definitely don't hate people from other countries, and I don't think it should be applied just to Mexico. I think it, it
applies to everyone.
Anyone, I don't care if you're coming from Sweden.
People coming from everywhere, just using the Mexico border to get here. I mean,
exactly. So that's my viewpoint on that. Free healthcare. Is healthcare a right? I think that nothing that requires the service of another person is an inalienable right. But I do think that we have a country that's strong enough economically. We need to do way better on healthcare. Obamacare sucks. I don't think you could say by any of the data that it's good. Everyone that I talk to that's a conservative, including myself, thinks the entire system is rigged, mostly by insurance companies. I think direct pay to doctors will lower the prices. Regulation has clearly not helped that industry.
Think you pull government out of healthcare and create a free market around it, and you watch the prices of all of it
will plummet down. Yeah.
Also, schooling should not cost $300,000. Like, I get it; it's a specialty, but at the same time, that's absurd. You shouldn't have to pay that much money to learn how to be a doctor and help people.
Yeah.
Like if we're going to give more scholarships and free education money, give it to those type things like healthcare.
Yeah.
You know,
more doctors, please. We'd love that.
That would be rad. But remove government out of it. Get rid of the government. I want them out of most things, to be honest. But remove government from healthcare. Let it become a free market.
Here's what I mean by remove government. We have, and this is why I actually appreciate what the Supreme Court did with this Chevron deference doctrine. Yeah. It gives regulatory industries too much power, and we've stripped that, and that's good. So I'm not saying I don't think there should be laws around healthcare. I'm great with laws that are ratified by Congress and voted on around healthcare.
Right.
I don't want regulatory agencies running healthcare.
Right.
Like I think it's even worse, and it's called crony capitalism, when you have companies and regulators working together to regulate themselves. That's where you get most of the corruption.
Yeah, it's dirty.
It's super dirty. So if we could make a way where, and like that's why I like my little $30,000 health account. Like if you have a medical emergency you can't afford,
you can tap into.
Or I would even be willing to say, because I believe doctors should be compensated. I just think it's wildly out of control with insurance companies, like a titanium bolt from Stryker Orthopedics. Sorry, Stryker, but I do know some of your pricing because I knew someone back in the day that worked there.
Right.
But like these bolts are buying for like $185 and selling them for $6,000. The kind of markups are insane, and I would be okay with some kind of law or regulation that has price caps or price fixing.
Well, it's the same thing with the military too. I knew someone in the military that worked on jets, and when you start hearing about some of the parts, the pricing for parts, where you're paying like $40,000 for like a compressor, and I get it; these are top tier military fighting machines. They're gonna require a little bit more money.
Yeah, they should be expensive.
But when I have these people that literally their job is to work on them, say like it's the same compressor type thing that you would put in a Suburban. Yeah. Then how come the Suburban is $1,800, but this is tens of thousands of dollars?
Because of free market capitalism. That's why this was cheap.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Bring the free market capitalism back into some things.
The other idea I had is, again, anyone who immigrates here legally or is born here has a social. If you need a medical procedure emergency that you can't afford, why does the hospital have to pay it or other taxpayers? Can't we just ascribe it like a debt that comes when you get your tax return? They take not all of it, but a percentage to pay off your medical debts. Yeah. So like I would be okay with systems like that. Okay, so let's talk about common sense gun laws. Actually in favor of those. I like the cooling off period.
What's the cooling off period? What do you mean by cooling off?
Well, I don't know if it's a federal law or a state law, but there are states that say, listen, if you want to buy a handgun, you got to come in and apply, and then you got to wait a certain amount of time. I think that's really smart.
Sure.
I don't have any issue with that. But it is our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. And you can tell me all day, it's like, well, how are you going to fight the American military with your little M16s and M4s and ARs?
Yeah,
it's
like, well, 100 million of us.
Well, and the same way that when you're in Fallujah or overseas, like our military had to be careful going into the cities because urban warfare is no joke, and incendiary devices and small arms can resist a very, very strong army. So I am in favor of that. I am the biggest threat to anyone's personal liberty is a tyrannical government. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think that we should have common sense gun laws, and I'm in favor of those. And most conservatives actually are.
Yeah, I would think they are. I mean, I'm obviously a big 2A guy. I support the ownership of guns.
Yeah, me too. Have lots of them.
I like the background check. Like a med. Do they do a medical check still? Type thing?
I don't know, but you check your vision to drive. I think it would be okay for them to require a referral or something.
I think there should be some form of check to make sure that you're mentally stable to be able to own a firearm, because what we don't want to do is give people that have some issues access to guns to go do crazy shit.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of that. I don't have an opinion.
But you can't have liberty without risk. So I think that
you got to roll the dice a little bit.
Yeah, you have to. And I think that at current, it's worth the risk. The data that I'm seeing, unless someone can provide other data, is that gun-free zones have the most gun crime.
Yeah, look at Chicago.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've seen the statistics from the FBI and things like that. which I would definitely, most people agree is not a conservative organization. That's the data that I see. I know all of our feeds are different. We don't see the same data,
Right.
but that's the data that I'm seeing. So I don't know.
I mean, it's the cringy conservative saying, but the best thing to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, to be honest. And so,
well, yeah, that's what they dispatch police with. I mean,
with
that's
guns.
how you stop it. Yeah. So most conservatives believe that and agree with that. We only have a few more minutes, so I'm trying to get through some of why I think this is valuable is because if you're on the left and you hear what the media says about conservatives, you'll misunderstand our viewpoint. I'm also willing to agree or concede that I probably misunderstand yours. And my bet is that we're closer than we think. So anyone is invited. Just ping us in the comments. If you want to come on, we will love to have you on and hear your perspective.
Yeah.
Agreed?
I agree.
Okay. The other big hot topic is abortion, pro-life, pro-choice. Most conservatives are pro-life for the reason that they feel like human life, even in the mother's womb, will inevitably be a human right. And the way I've heard it said among people that I hang out with is like, well, if I have a vote to cast, I believe the baby would choose to live. So I'm going to give my vote to them. So, and I think that's a reasonable vote. Do I think there are exceptions? Of course, I think that there are exceptions. I think they should be limited because you're talking about taking a human life.
Right.
In my viewpoint, I don't think anyone can prove that it's not a human life.
No.
I think that as far as like taxes, I would be in favor. Like my dream state, flat tax.
Yeah.
No loopholes. Everyone just pays the same, and it's off of income or revenue.
Right.
That would be like dream state.
Oh, that'd be an easy one to agree with.
Now, do you think that the next president can stop inflation or not?
I mean, I think at this point we are looking at our new norm. I think that best case scenario, the next president comes in and our economy kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know if regulate's the right word. It kind of just, it cools off a bit to the point where we've got more money coming in to justify the increased cost of stuff. I don't think prices are going to go down on anything. I think
it's just, I mean, I believe it's economic science. Someone can prove me wrong. But what I'm understanding is when you print so much money, and actually started in Obama's era with quantitative easing, Q1 through 4, when you print so much cash supply, it devalues the currency, which
100%.
makes sense, right?
It makes a lot of sense.
And so we're feeling the beginnings of what I think is going to be hyperinflation. The analysts I'm seeing are that. So I don't think whether it's Trump or whomever else the Democrats put up, we don't know as of right now. Right. I don't think that person is going to have the power to put the brakes on inflation until we get money out of circulation.
I think we're 8 to 12 years out from seeing a correction in the right way, as long as the right person is in office. Yeah.
I think that what the person in office can do is remove regulatory red tape. I think no one here can argue that small businesses, medium-sized and large businesses are the economic drivers for America's success. Yeah. And so as long as there's, again, river banks, like there's flows, I would actually be okay with a cap on what a CEO can make. I actually would be okay. And I am a hardcore capitalist. I think that there's some sense to that, you know. I think just like there's a minimum wage, there could be a maximum wage.
Sure.
I mean, the capitalists are going to hate me for saying that.
Yeah.
But when I hear the news of like the CEO of United Healthcare making $44 million a year, knowing that they denied $42 million in life-saving policies, that makes me mad, and I think it should make any reasonable person mad.
It's insane.
That's insane.
That's stupid.
So, and a lot of conservatives are okay with that,
right?
Believe it or not, you know. So, I don't think we're as far apart. How we get there, though, I think is where we really differ.
Right.
I think that in a left-leaning liberal viewpoint, the government is the nanny and makes us all do what we say. And in our viewpoint, you pass laws and then you use the court systems and the checks and balances to sue those companies, or people are free to disobey the law, but you catch them and then prosecute them.
Right.
That's our viewpoint.
Yeah. You get the freedom to make your choices, but then again, there's consequences to every action, good or bad.
And that's the main difference that I see between the two parties is one wants speech regulated, decisions regulated. The other wants consequences, and they want crimes to be punished.
Yeah.
And you can see how the two viewpoints branch off. In this one, they won't punish crimes, or I mean, that's kind of a generalization, but you'll see in more liberal cities, they'll let things go until it's so bad that they have to rein it back in. This is literally happening currently in San Francisco. It happened in Portland, Oregon, that it's like, everything's okay. And they're like, well, now our cities are unlivable. So
a whole block of Seattle got taken over a couple of years ago. Like, to me, that's crazy. And we let them just do it.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That is wild. Civilization requires civility.
Mm-hmm.
Communities require communication. Like it's in the names. Like we need to pass laws, and then I agree that no one should be above the law.
Yeah,
I agree. So if Trump commits a crime, he should be prosecuted. I think that what happened to him, I would say my opinion is because of all the expert legal analysts that have come on and say this case has no teeth. This is crazy. What, and these are left-leaning lawyers that have been prosecuting in New York for a long time. I think that it's not a stretch to say that that is the DOJ mobilizing to keep him out of office and to fulfill a commitment that she was going to take down Trump. Yeah.
I mean, if I remember correctly, and again, I will qualify this as speculation because I don't have the proof in front of me, but I'll try and find it. I'm pretty sure what they tried to charge him for, Bill Clinton did the same thing.
Yeah.
Back in 2000.
Hillary also did it. Yeah.
So
in New York,
if we're going to call it a crime, then everyone needs to be held to the same standard of crime.
Yeah.
So that's where you can look at this and I would say rightfully assume that this is politically
motivated.
Yeah, political leadership going after their opponents.
And why that makes people like me and you so angry is that you shouldn't be able to use those institutions to suppress people you don't agree with.
Yeah.
Flip side is true as well. And that's one of the big differences I see between the two sides is, I'll just call it our side. We are centrist, right-leaning, is we believe that you shouldn't be able to do that to prosecute viewpoints we don't agree with.
Yeah,
like no one should have that power.
No. My biggest issue with Trump at this point, and the only reason why I wished someone else, I was a big Vivek Ramaswamy guy, to be honest.
Vivek is awesome.
If I had my magic wand, Trump wouldn't have even gotten in there, because I firmly believe we're going to sit here, if Trump wins, we're going to watch the first 12 to 24 months of his presidency is just him on a witch
unrest
hunt,
and him trying to.
He's going to try and take down every single person that wronged him, and we're going to not get anything done for 2 years.
Yeah, and that's really where I think people on the left have a reasonable viewpoint, and this should scare everybody. Like, why does our executive branch have that much power?
Mm-hmm.
That's too much power.
100%.
Whether it's Biden wielding it or Trump wielding it, But I would be okay if Trump pardons people and tries to right some of the wrongs in a regulatory sense.
Right.
I'm great with that. But I agree that I think he has to be really, if he gets in office, he needs to be really, really wise about who he personally goes after.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm seeing that this side does to this side. And it's like cancel culture, hot take. All these conservatives that find people who are like, yeah, Trump, I wish Trump, I wish the guy wouldn't have missed, etc.
Yeah.
And we're like, here, get him fired. I think that's a despicable viewpoint.
Yeah,
but
you're disgusting for saying it, but I guess it's your right.
We can't have it both ways.
Yeah. You can't cancel people for saying something you disagree with and be all up in arms of they canceled us, and then the moment you see something happen, it's now, get him.
Yeah,
it's our turn now.
Shut the hell up. That's a big oof to me. I'm just like, dude, leave him alone.
Okay.
It's awful. Avoid them yourself, but don't try to get him fired.
Last hot take question, which will be an interesting one. Trump assassination. We didn't even really talk about it. Do you think it was
inside job?
Inside job.
100%.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Without we now know there's two shooters. Hopefully we'll put out our episode before the media announces it, but they have video footage of someone coming down from the tower, getting into a vehicle. The vehicle's registered to the Department of Agriculture.
You're talking about the water tower?
Water tower, yeah.
Oh.
Have you seen that?
Well, I saw one clip that said that there was someone up there, and then I saw another clip like a couple hours later saying that it was proved that there was no one on the tower.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff I saw this morning was more there's citizen journalists on X, and they get some stuff wrong because they try to formulate a conclusion before they're just presenting the evidence.
Right.
So for sure, you have to, if you're on X and you're getting your news that way, there is some wait and see a little bit. You're like, okay, that's interesting. Compartmentalize that. Let's wait and see how that develops, right? So I would say that the stories develop as you get more and more information. The
100%.
problem is that I believe that traditional media uses that development time to spin the narrative in a direction, which is why if there is a shooting or a crime and you don't hear about the person's race, you know what race they are.
Right.
If they are white and a guy, you are going to hear about it like the moment it comes out. I mean, provably that has happened hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Because I believe that the people who control the media, it's in their best interest to paint this group, which is a typical Trump supporter, in the worst light possible.
Right.
I think you can prove that.
Yeah.
But on X, you have to wait for things to develop, but you do get information earlier.
Yeah.
So the reason I mentioned that is because, like, what I saw this morning, it was more credible news agencies kind of start to publish that information. So it must be validated. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but I do believe it was an inside job based on the evidence of the Secret Service was clearly stripped down in their coverage. A lot of their own policies they didn't follow. So 500 yards around the speaking area is supposed to be secured. The shooter was 150 yards away. That rooftop wasn't secured. The whole thing where the Secret Service director said, oh, the roof was too sloped and it's a 5% pitch, but the other snipers
were on a
15%. Yeah. That's, I mean, anyone with a brain. But again, we're not dealing with people with brains a lot of times. Like we're dealing with people who will they'll watch Biden stammer, stutter, and be like, he's best Biden I've ever seen because the media says that. So that's why I think that you have to be careful about it. Like you should be able to reason and look at evidence, which is again why I support free speech. Like put it all out there, let the American public decide.
Right.
So where I'm at now, and we know because the JFK files were released, inside job. We see a lot of inside jobs like this. That's so sad that we have a government like that. But that's where I'm landing right now. Inside job.
I heard. I'll end with this. There was one wild speculation I heard that was because right now I would say there's a fair amount of people, mostly right leaning, that believe it was an inside job, and they believe it was the someone in the Biden party or the Dem party that called for this to happen. I watched another guy say he believes it was the right that actually called it,
like a false flag.
Yeah, and the reason they do that is because Trump is he is claiming to come in and he's going to shut all the wars down, the Middle East war and the war in Ukraine. Now,
I think it's possible.
And the reason why is because both parties are double dipping. Was his speculation. The left is dipping into the Ukraine freaking war to line their pockets with everything else. And the right is dipping into Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
They don't want those wars to end because I believe that once you make enough money, like the pursuit of money doesn't fulfill you anymore. So then the next thing you go for is power and control.
100%.
You've got all the money. Now you want the power and control. So you need to do what you can to safeguard your power and control. And I think that's pretty prominent in most of the
I'm open to it being a right inside job. I'm open to that. I think it was an inside job. The reason why I think I tend to lean toward the left if it's an inside job is because or I guess they could have cooperated. But they control this. Biden controls the Secret Service.
Yeah.
And that's where most of the failures were.
Right.
So they had to be getting orders. We actually personally know one of the snipers that had, I won't say any names, but I got to talk on the phone with the sniper that had the guy in his sights.
Oh, no.
And what he said on Reddit is true. He had the guy in his sights and he was like, I need to take the shot.
And he was told to stand down.
That's what he said. On the phone. Yeah. We know, I'll tell you offline, but we know a mutual friend who knows the person personally. That's pretty crazy to me. So that's why I tend to be on the inside job thing. Also, if you see what's the shooter's name? I can't remember. Matthew Cook or something.
Oh,
or Crook.
Yeah, something Crooks.
Crooks. Anyway, the people are like, oh, he's a Republican. 100% not. There's video footage of him saying like "death to Republicans," slit their Republican throats
at the college campus.
At the college campus.
Yeah.
I mean,
He was
clearly
screaming,
not a
slit their
conservative.
throats, not a big fan of Republicans.
Agreed that he registered as a Republican.
Right.
If you haven't heard the argument, there are many Democrats who will register as a Republican for a primary to vote against Trump. And the prevailing theory that I think is probably most accurate is that that's what he did in Pennsylvania, because you have to register as a Republican to vote in the Pennsylvania primary.
Right.
So, I land on the inside job. Crazy, crazy world.
It's friggin' wild.
Yeah. One of the interesting things to me is sometimes like I'll see a really bad take or a bad argument from either side, and I'll want to put my viewpoint in there. I just delete it because it's not worth the trouble,
Right.
Which is one of the reasons why I agreed to do this episode, just so we can have a long format to kind of explain, our viewpoints or my viewpoint. But one of the interesting, because we talked a lot this episode about like the double standard, and I don't want to be victim of it.
Right.
It's like if I say human life has value, then that means criminals, because it's a human life. And
Right.
so I had to agree and come that direction, even though I used to be pro death penalty. Now I'm anti-death penalty. And I would just say, search your heart. Like if you actually say and believe a human life has value, then I think you should be, you should be cognitively consistent, or logically consistent. So one of my issues with what I see on the left, and I see a bit of it on the right, but certainly more on the left, and maybe that's just because that's what my feed is. So I'm open for anyone to come do this. But what I'll see is like, I'll say, oh, well, I believe this way. And then they'll say, you're a bigot and a fascist. How come, wouldn't it be logically consistent if on the left you'll subscribe that people can change their gender by saying that it's changed, and that people need to call them their preferred pronouns and treat them a certain way, even if the other side doesn't believe it's true? Why can you define my viewpoints and beliefs? If I say I'm not a fascist and I don't believe that, why are you allowed to ascribe those viewpoints to me, even if you believe it's not true? Right. So I see a lot of logical inconsistency in those viewpoints. How come someone couldn't identify as another race?
Right.
Why is that not okay, but gender is okay? So I would love to hear someone's viewpoint, like to come on the show and explain that. I struggle with that. It's like this party of self-identification. If I say, well, I don't believe I'm a bigot, and I'm certainly not a fascist. I despise fascism. That's government control over viewpoints and ideologies. It's literally the opposite of what I believe.
Right.
Why can you call me that and I can't say, hey, no. I'm not that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you see the logical inconsistency.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so to me, what it does is it pulls back the veil a bit. And what it says to me is that this ideology believes that there's a truth and is going to force everyone by power, by whatever, to believe that truth. And that's why I haven't been able to land in that camp ever.
Right.
Is because it's too controlling. Like you have to buy into the whole ideology or nothing.
Yeah.
Is what it seems. And I don't find that to be true in conservatives. Like I have a lot of disagreements with conservative friends. Like even saying like, I think that there should be exceptions for abortion. They're like, well, that you're a heretic sinner then.
Get out.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I think that when you're governing, and my fallback will be like, well, God allows us to have freedom and clearly says this is right and this is wrong. And I'm still, because if you believe that God keeps the breath in our lungs and keeps us alive, which is in scripture, he holds our cells together, then he is essentially upholding us and giving us the ability to disagree with him. It's like within his will, we have the ability to disagree with his will and do things outside of it.
Right.
So that's why I think as Christians, if we're going to govern a society that where not everyone's Christians, we can't force people to believe the way that we believe.
Yeah.
We can stop people from, we can make it a crime to hurt each other, to murder, to rape. All those things are commonly agreed upon.
Right.
And we should have laws around them and we should enforce them. But anyway, I just wanted to say that like, if this camp wants to be able to self-assign gender, then shouldn't we be able to self-identify what our viewpoints are? Either let's go of both of them or keep both of them. Choose, be logically consistent. So,
right.
That's something that I would love to have a discussion about with someone who can represent this viewpoint well. It's always just bugged me a little bit.
Yeah, no, I get that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So invitation out to anyone who's left leaning. The more left, the better, I think.
Sure.
We'll listen to your viewpoints. We'll let you say them on the podcast, as long as you're open to a conversation where we can refute the belief if we don't agree. We might agree on more than you think. But yeah, I mean, I just think that representation is awesome. So come on the show and talk about what you believe, and as long as we can keep it civil and have a good discourse, I'd be open to it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, sweet. Well, hey, thanks for joining. This was, I don't know how spicy. It's not very spicy, actually.
Yeah, I thought it'd be a little spicier, but
yeah,
we didn't get too worked up. But here's the difference. Okay, last point, and I was saying it earlier. Everything doesn't have to be a debate. The cool thing about what we're doing, we see a lot of people that will have conversations like this all over every platform, and it's usually a really hyped up someone for whatever party they're a part of, where I would argue that you and I are just a couple of normal dudes trying to figure life out and do our best at participating in it, just discussing points. It is easier because we align pretty similarly on most things. Everything doesn't have to be a debate. We lost the art of just having a conversation. And I mean, there's been a lot of talks I've had where I've held pretty strong to a viewpoint, but after talking about it for a few hours with someone,
you might soften a bit on it.
Yeah, I've changed my viewpoint on things. I used to be 100% pro death penalty, and I'm 100% against the death penalty now.
Yeah. Me too. That's exactly.
I switched
because somebody pointed out the double standard to
100%.
Me, and I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. I mean.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was just simple. Like it's not our job to play God.
Yeah.
Regardless, this person committed heinous crimes. There's one element you mentioned earlier where sometimes we get it wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't want to kill an innocent person.
Yeah.
And number two, regardless of how heinous their crime was, they're still a human being.
Yeah.
And it's not our job to decide who gets to live and die.
Yeah. And then that's why I landed, Marie and I both landed on that viewpoint. It's not that you don't want them to die. Yeah, and that's one of the big difference. It's like, you might want, if you're on the left, you might want these conservatives to die. You might want that. You might think the world would be better without them in it. I disagree.
Yeah.
And I disagree. Like, I don't want anyone on the left to die, get sick, have disease. I don't wish those things on anyone. Like, why would you wish that on someone who is your fellow man, your fellow women? Like, I don't know how people get there.
Yeah, it's just a lot of broken people.
Yeah, including when we go to war and have to fight our enemies. Like, you hear soldiers come back all the time. I talk to them. It's like, man, I wonder if we met in different circumstances. Like, it's tragic. We shouldn't want it.
Yeah, it's insane. It's heartbreaking, really. So, but yeah, if someone wants to come on.
Yep. Invitation's open. Come chat with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Cool.
Bye.